Well, good evening and welcome here to Restore UK. Restore UK Live going out to the British Unionist People's Voice on Facebook, Restore UK on Facebook, and also to Restore UK on the YouTube. Now, from the British Unionist People's Voice and also from the Restore UK platform, you can share this screen. And what we rely on here is we rely on the people that come to share our screen far and wide. And also, if you think that there's anyone that might want to hear Jim Allister speaking tonight on matters of great importance for Northern Ireland's place within the United Kingdom, well, what I would ask you to do is to tag people into the live chat in order that we can get as many people here as humanly possible. Because I believe that we have a very informative night lined up with Jim Allister, and we really do thank him for coming along. I'm going to suggest something here, and I've asked the leaders of all British Unionist parties to come on to Restore and to talk to the people about what it is that's happening, and also about the way forward in order that we can team together to fight against anything which is coming down our line. And so far, the only people that has done this would be Billy Hutchison from the PUP, and also this is now Jim Allister that is coming on. And we've asked Jeffrey Donaldson, and he has said that he would talk to us and that he would come on, but we're always put on the long finger, and it's as if the important questions, well, some people, I would suggest, they don't want to be put in the position where they're being asked the questions that everyone needs to ask. So without any further ado, what I would like to do is I would like to bring on screen Jim Allister, and I would like to thank him for coming along. And I would like just to start by asking Jim to give you a bit of context as to, Jim used to be in the DUP. Why is it now that Jim is the leader of the traditional unionist voice? Why was it that he felt the need to split from the DUP and to form his own party? Jim, thanks very much for coming along, and over to you.
Well, the answer is very simple. The catalyst for me leaving the DUP came about after St Andrews at the early part of 2007, when the DUP decided to take a direction that I in conscience could not sustain or support. And namely, they decided to sit down with and go into government with IRA Sinn Fein. And from that moment, that was the end of my involvement in the DUP. I did not enter politics to usher Martin McGuinness into government, to make him joint First Minister or anything else. So the time had come in conscience where if that's where the party was going, then it had to leave me behind. And shortly after that, I recognized and realized that there were other like-minded people who needed a voice. And I think that's where the voice part of the title of Traditional Unionist Voice came from, that there were people who felt voiceless. And so TV was started as the voice for such people. And of course, as a fiercely unionist party, as a party determined that Northern Ireland should continue to exercise its birthright within the United Kingdom. And as things have unfolded and progressed, of course, that's meant not only us leading opposition to IRA Sinn Féin in government, but leading opposition to other union dismantling propositions like the protocol, about which I suspect we will talk much tonight, because make no mistake about it, this protocol is in the business of dismantling the union. And that's its purpose and its modus operandi. And that's why I am one of its most vigorous opponents.
My fault. What I'm going to do at this stage is I'm going to play a short video clip. And, you talk about issues to do with the protocol in this video clip. And for the people on the live chat, maybe you come from England, Scotland, or Wales, and we want you really to see Jim in action. And I'm going to say, we look right across the unionist family here in Northern Ireland, and we do get some fine words from other political parties, other politicians, but Jim's really the only man that takes people to task in the Northern Ireland Assembly. So we just want you to see Jim at work, and then we're going to come back off the back of this short video, and we're going to ask Jim some questions based on what it is that he's speaking about.
220 years from the activation of the Act of Union. Article 6 of that Act of Union was a fundamental building block, a foundation of this union. And it was to the effect that across and within the entirety of the United Kingdom, there would be free and frictionless trade from which every citizen could benefit. Sadly, on this 1st of January, coming on Friday, Article 6 of the Act of Union will be trashed. by the protocol, which creates friction in trade within the United Kingdom, which causes an Irish Sea border to aid that friction. And of course, which brings with it the odious imposition of laws which we never made, which we cannot change, and which will be supervised by a foreign court in a foreign jurisdiction. This is not the Brexit I voted for. It did not say on my ballot paper, do you want GB to leave the EU and leave Northern Ireland behind, abandoned in the EU's customs union, in a single market, in its VAT regime? No, it invited me to vote to leave as we joined, as one nation. One of my great sadnesses is that it is a DUP minister, though the Irish Sea border has been delivered by the betrayal of Brexit, that is building the infrastructure. And though the DUP in principle correctly today in Westminster will vote against this deal, in this House they've been voting to implement the protocol.
Jim, Article 6, the Act of the Union. I heard you talking about that in Clifton Street, Orange Hall, some years before that the protocol was put in place. I think that was in December of 2019. So, I mean, you were tuned in to the problem from the very, very start. Would you just like to tell people, I mean, how significant of a constitutional change happened whenever the British government moved to transform or certainly to override or to alter Article 16?
Well, let's understand this. What is the union of Great Britain and Northern Ireland? It's, on one hand, an economic union, and the other hand, it's a political union. Now, the economic union flows directly and inexorably from Article 6 of the Acts of Union. And Article 6, as I said in that clip, guaranteed to every citizen, no matter which part of the United Kingdom they came from, the same ground rules, the same guarantees of unfettered trade between and within. Along comes the protocol and turns that on its head. And you don't have to accept my word for that. A High Court judge in the Judicial Review Challenge, which I'm involved with and which returns next Monday to the Court of Appeal in Northern Ireland, a High Court judge has ruled that the protocol is incompatible with Article 6 because it fetters, whereas Article 6 guarantees unfettered trade. And in consequence, he has ruled that Article 6 has been repealed by the protocol. So here we are in a situation where one of the fundamental legs of the union, namely the economic union, has been trashed by the protocol. And it's been trashed because it takes Northern Ireland and Northern Ireland alone from within the United Kingdom and puts us in a foreign single market for goods, under a foreign customs code, a foreign VAT regime, all of which is overseen by foreign laws that we don't make, can't change, and they themselves supervised by a foreign court. That is a transfer of sovereignty. That is constitutional change. And therein is the constitutional change of the protocol, that Article 6 has been repealed and that we are now subject to foreign jurisdiction in their lawmaking and in their supervision. And that involves that transfer of sovereignty. So the protocol has never been about sausages. It's been about sovereignty. And that is the fundamental issue. Whose writ runs in Northern Ireland as part of the United Kingdom? Is it the British writ or is it the EU writ? Sadly, on all the dimensions of the protocol, it's the EU writ. It's the EU's writ. And that's why it is obnoxious and unacceptable. And that's why, of course, it is itself in total breach of the supposed constitutional guarantee of the Belfast Agreement of no constitutional change without consent. It's happened without consent. It's already here. And those who seek to sustain it are seeking to supplant the control that should flow from being a part of the United Kingdom and replace it by foreign jurisdiction, such as the protocol gives. So that's why it cuts to the very heart of what it is to be part of the United Kingdom. If you surrender part of your own territory, it is a question of territorial integrity and of territorial sovereignty. And that's why it is fundamental to our existence as part of the United Kingdom.
Yeah. And just another question on the protocol itself. I mean, I believe the protocol to be constitutional changing, and I believe that the protocol is the main problem. Can you have a protocol and can you have no constitutional change, Jim?
Well, you can't have this protocol and no constitutional change, because it overtly and deliberately it decrees that there is this constitutional change by virtue of it overwhelming a portion of our constitution. You could have a protocol which respected our constitutional position, but that would mean you wouldn't be subject to foreign laws, you wouldn't be subject to a foreign court, you wouldn't be in a foreign single market for goods or a foreign customs code or under a VAT regime. So yes, you could have workable arrangements with the EU, but that's not what we've got. We've got unworkable arrangements for a constitutional purpose of perfecting constitutional change. And of course, no one should be under any illusion that there is a political agenda at work with the protocol. The very idea of the protocol is to build an all-Ireland economy, to cause the Northern Ireland and its economy, by compulsion of blocking trade with our main market, to look to the south, to cause us to look away from London towards Dublin and the EU for our economic development, in the belief and the hope that if you can build an all-Ireland economically, it's a relatively short step to building an all-Ireland politically. And that is the evil genius of the protocol. It's not about trade. It's not about making sure there isn't friction with the EU. It's about extracting Northern Ireland as a punishment from the United Kingdom and setting it on an irreversible course towards Irish political unity. And that is the purpose of the protocol.
Yeah. And whenever the protocol it came into being, and even slightly before it, at the late part of last year, we had Arlene Foster, we even had Jeffrey Donaldson, and we had some who we call them our political leaders, and they were saying, well, we've got to make the best of what's there. It's not going away. And we have here on record several people actually saying that. Are they fooling themselves, Jim, if they think that they can work within the protocol and not do damage to the United Kingdom?
Absolutely. The protocol is wholly incompatible in its manifestations with our position in the United Kingdom. And yes, Arlene Foster said some foolish things back in October 2019 when the protocol was first foreshadowed. She said it was a sensible proposal. She said that some people wanted to keep on fighting it, but we needed to make the best of it. Now, she ultimately came to a different view, and that's good. Jeffrey said at the start of this year on a BBC Spotlight programme that there were no constitutional implications for custom checks on goods coming from one part of the United Kingdom to another. He's not saying that anymore. That's good. But TV was always very clear that there were indisputable constitutional consequences once you annex Northern Ireland, as we were being annexed, out of the United Kingdom for all those trade purposes into the EU. And let me illustrate it very simply. Approximately 2/3 of the laws that now govern Northern Ireland's economy, all that touches upon the single market, the EU single market for goods, the customs code, the VAT regime, approximately 2/3 of the laws that govern our economy are now made not in Belfast, not in London, but in Brussels, with no say no control. So that's a very clear, tangible manifestation of the takeover that has been the product of the protocol of Northern Ireland by the EU. And there can be no progress unless and until the EU gives up its ill-gotten sovereignty over Northern Ireland. There's no point in the EU Commission talking about we will be as flexible as we can, but making it clear all the time you must operate their rules. There's no point in people saying we need to get practical, workable solutions. The only solution here is the EU has to give up its ill-gotten sovereignty. And unless until it does that, there can be no settlement of this issue. It's as clear and as simple as that. Because if there is a settlement short of that, then Northern Ireland has been diminished and betrayed within the Union.
Yeah. Jim, we have four parties here with they say that they have the Union at their heart. We have the TUV, we have the DUP, we have the UUP, and we have the PUP. And I recently, Doug Beattie, he took over the leadership role within the UUP. And we heard recently on the media when Doug Beattie would have said that he is a constitutional unionist. He's not an economic unionist. Jim, would you just like to give us your thoughts on that statement? And I mean, is that a compatible sort of a position?
Well, I think it takes you back to my first observation. What is the union? The union is both an economic union and a political union. And indeed, Northern Ireland has known great prosperity because of the economic union that we have with Great Britain. So I'm unashamedly a constitutional unionist, believing emphatically in the constitution that binds us into the United Kingdom and the entity that is the United Kingdom. But I'm also unashamedly an economic unionist because I see the advantages of being part of the fifth biggest economy in the world and part of all that. But we're losing that by virtue of the fact that we've been siphoned off into this annexation with the EU. So that's why we need to restore the integrity of the union for Northern Ireland and give us the right to be, as every other part of the United Kingdom is, wholly outside the EU, unfettered by ties with it.
Yeah. Jim, I like that quote, restore the integrity of the United Kingdom. And given that you call us Restore, well, your face will be on a meme with that very quote in the very, very near future. Jim, what I'm going to do now is that I want you to talk about something that happened in the Northern Ireland Assembly on the run up to the protocol having life breathed into it. There was a famous vote in the Northern Ireland Assembly, and you know it came across that there was two particular people from within that assembly that voted against the mechanisms that would breathe life into the protocol. It was yourself, and it was also Jim Wells. Can I ask you to explain to the listeners what was that vote all about, and exactly what was happening if that the people that voted it into place? I mean, what were they actually voting into place?
Well, let me just set that out as best I can. On the 8th of December last year, in preparation for the protocol coming into effect, the Department of Agriculture and Rural Affairs brought a motion to the Assembly. Now, that's from a department which has a DUP minister. And the proposition in that motion was to implement 45 separate EU regulations that are all recited in the protocol in order to create the circumstances where the protocol's demands could operate. Those included such things as the proposition that it should become unlawful to import from GB to Northern Ireland sweet potatoes, for example. There was a regulation specifically on that. There was a regulation specifically on the fact that it would be unlawful to bring British soil into Northern Ireland on the wheels of tractors that were coming over on the ferries. Now, you'll not be surprised to hear that when I read those regulations and understood what they meant, I very, vigorously opposed them in the Assembly and pointed out the folly of us bringing those in. And indeed, in some of them, we were amending our own domestic legislation. So that even if the protocol went tomorrow, they made amendments to our legislation which would still stand. So it was a breathtaking moment of stupidity by those who proclaimed themselves to be both unionists and opposed to the protocol. And yet when it came to it, I forced a vote with Jim Wells. You always need two people to force a vote in the Assembly. We forced a vote. 81 members of the Assembly voted for, 2 voted against. Within the 81, every unionist of the 2 main parties was in the lobby to sanction, to provide their imprimatur to, and to enforce EU laws in Northern Ireland. And therefore, to breathe life into and activate the protocol. An act of stupendous folly by those who either hadn't read, or if they read, didn't understand, or were just blindly voting for something that was put in front of them. But they can't say they did it in ignorance, because I spent some time expounding where it was so dangerous and so fallacious to do, and yet they did it. And that, to me, was a very compelling reminder of this danger within uneducated MLAs of self-inflicting damage. And sometimes I look around the Assembly and I say to myself, no wonder we're in the mess we're in, when I look at the quality and the lack of rigor and vigor applied to legislation by some who are here supposedly representing unionist interests. But at the end of the day, people get what they vote for. And when the next vote, I want them to remember that. You get what you vote for.
Yeah. Now, I can put some information to the people here with reference to the vote that took place. Alex Easton, the MLA that used to be attached to the DUP, he left the DUP, he went independent. And part of the reason why that he done that, I mean, we had him here on Restore and we talked to him. And I asked Alex Easton, I mean, you were one of the people that voted for these 45 regulations. And I says, look, Alec, is there anything that you can tell us? I mean, why did you do that? And he says that a special advisor from within the DUP had presented him with a paper. And whenever he questioned the lack of information on the paper, he was told, look, don't worry, it's all going to be okay. So again, that's the reason that Alex Easton had actually given us. So, and I find it absolutely unbelievable that took place. And thanks very much for you clarifying, Jim, what it was that people were voting for on that day. Now, what I want to do now is I want to play a short clip here. It's a short clip of myself and Professor John Tong from the University of Liverpool. And I asked John Tong a question, Jim, and I would like you to listen to this. And given that you, you have legal background, you are a barrister, I would like you to answer the question that I believe that John Tong didn't answer. This is only a very, very short clip. So here we go. And let's look at this concept of democracy. And whenever that you would place your axe on a ballot paper, and I'll just pop the particular ballot paper up here for people to see. And the commentary I would give here is that it was a referendum for the entire United Kingdom, as you can see. I mean, if I place my axe here in the Leave the European Union, and 17.4 plus million other people also done exactly the same, and we won the referendum, so to speak, is it ever right? Now, this is a very serious question, and I'd like you to answer this really, carefully for me. But, is it ever acceptable from an academic's point of view, from a professor of politics point of view, that democracy would be split up in the way that it was split up, and having, say, for example, there's 4 constituent parts, 3 constituent parts are treated differently than 1 constituent part? Why is that ever acceptable, John?
It's a great question, John, and it's a difficult one. It's a complex one to answer, because I get the premise of your question, And in many ways, I know where you're going with it, and I agree to a considerable extent. You were asked remain or leave, and it didn't say but one part of the UK will leave on different terms to the rest of the UK. And that's where I think that the Loyalists protested, and the DUP and UUP are correct in posing departure on different terms from the rest of the UK. We also live in a world of pragmatism. So you can argue that the EU played that border for all it was worth, the north-south border. And I would have, again, some sympathy with that argument. But we knew that was coming. I would agree that the signs are not good early on. There's been shortages in supermarkets. There's been, firms unaware of what they've got to do. And if you're a Great Britain, invest in Great Britain, why would you be particularly interested in trading in Northern Ireland, given you've got this extra paperwork to complete? So I understand the annoyance of unionists.
Jim, over to you to give some commentary on what you just heard there.
Well, I thought it was a pretty limp response. Like the question is a good one, and it's an irrefutable one. The question on the ballot paper, it was the same in Aberdeen as in Ballymena or Burnley or anywhere else, and yet the answer given was interpreted differently. As you pointed out, it didn't say, do you want Great Britain to leave and leave Northern Ireland behind? It said, do you want the United Kingdom to leave? That was the question that in good faith, I and every other voter answered. But we got different treatment. And we got different treatment because of an orchestrated campaign, including threats of Republican violence, if the border had been put where it should be. The border, so far as it's needed, and remember, it's the EU that wants to protect its single market. So the burden is on the EU to protect its single market. We're not some surrogate for the EU, whereby the United Kingdom should be protecting it for them. So the border should be where the international frontier is. The only reason it's not where the international frontier is, and the only reason why it's been pushed to the Irish Sea to partition the United Kingdom, is because of the overt threat of violence from Irish republicanism. And it was a surrender to that pushed the border to the point where it now is. And yet, no one ever suggested that if you vote to leave the EU and you live in Northern Ireland, you won't really leave. You'll actually stay. 2/3 of the laws that govern your economy will still be EU laws that you can't change. You will be in a foreign single market for goods, etc., etc. No one ever suggested that. And therefore, it was a dishonest perfection to then produce an outcome which denied to us Brexit. The problem for Northern Ireland is we didn't get Brexit. We got a protocol, which is denying of Brexit. And that's the fundamental that has to be reversed if we move forward on this issue.
Yeah. Jim, and I would like to look at the protocol, and I would like to place the compatibility of the protocol alongside the principle of consent contained within the Belfast Agreement. Would you just like to explain, is the protocol compatible with the principle of consent, or does it trash the principle of consent?
Yeah, well, let's start with what the Belfast Agreement says. And remember, this was the big selling point of it for those unionists who bought into it, that don't worry about anything because there can never be constitutional change without the consent of the greater number in Northern Ireland. Well, as I've illustrated in the first part of this programme, there has been constitutional change. We have a High Court judge telling us that a cornerstone of the Constitution, Article 6 of the Acts of Union, which guarantees the economic equality in the UK, which is the building block of the economic union of the United Kingdom, is gone. It's been repealed. It's been superseded by the protocol. Now, that is constitutional change. Likewise, the transfer of lawmaking powers from Northern Ireland, from London, to a foreign jurisdiction is a transfer of sovereignty. That is constitutional change. So no matter what way you look at it, there has been constitutional change, and yet no consent. No one asked at all. And of course, the reason we're not asked is lest there wouldn't be consent. And so what the protocol and the shenanigans surrounding it have demonstrated is that which people thought was something of value in the Belfast Agreement, namely the constitutional guarantee of no change without consent, turns out to be a fable and a deceit, a con. And we're seeing that every day by virtue of the fact that this constitutional change is taking place in spite of the Belfast Agreement. And it's then overlaid by the biggest lie of all, of course, that you had to have the protocol because of the Belfast Agreement. Belfast Agreement doesn't mention the EU other than in passing, doesn't say anything about Northern Ireland and the Republic not being able to be in different customs unions, different single markets. It doesn't say anything about there not being a border on the island of Ireland. And yet, to listen to the fanatics of the protocol, you would think it says all those things. It says none of them. So the Belfast Agreement itself has been distorted and misrepresented when it suits to deliver the protocol. But on that fundamental of making constitutional change, it turns out it wasn't worth the paper it was written on.
Jim, when the great and the good line up to say that their main aim is to protect the Belfast Agreement, are they lying?
Well, they're certainly not telling the truth, because the Belfast Agreement, the constitutional guarantee, has been trashed by the protocol. The protocol is pretending to protect something that isn't required to be protected in the Belfast Agreement. As I've said, there's nothing in the Belfast Agreement that says Northern Ireland and the Republic can't be in different single markets, can't be in different customs codes, under different VAT regimes, that there can't be a border on the island of Ireland. Nothing like that is in the Belfast Agreement. And yet those who peddle it and promote the protocol would have you believe it is. But, you know, one day I held up a copy of the Belfast Agreement in the Assembly and I said, "Oh, you great Europhiles, show me where within this document it says that you cannot have a different customs, single market, VAT arrangement on the island of Ireland." There was silence. No one could do it. But yet they were prepared to dishonestly hide behind and pretend content to the Belfast Agreement that isn't even there.
And Jim, whenever citizens, members of the British Unionist community here in Northern Ireland, whenever they look at the Belfast Agreement, whenever they believe it now to be a one-sided agreement, which only works for nationalists and Republicans. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I'm going to quote a few words from a poem written by a man that works in our background, a man called Jim Werner. And he wrote that the Belfast Agreement, it was a disguise. It was built for appeasement, swindle and lies. The peace is a farce. The IRA guns are still there. And London's afraid of another bomb scare. I mean, does this appeasement process, is this the reason why we as British Unionists are being treated as second-class citizens, that we as British Unionists have had our democracy removed effectively? We are not afforded the same democracy as people in England, Scotland and Wales. I mean, is it purely for appeasement purposes to keep the IRA from returning to some sort of criminality again? Is this what it's about?
I suspect by and large that's correct. And to remind you that when the Irish authorities, through their diplomatic service, were moving heaven and earth to get this protocol, Varadkar was playing the most dishonest game of all. He went to Brussels with a copy of the Irish Times, I think it was from 1971 or 2, showing a bomb customs post on the island of Ireland, which was blown up because of the IRA's campaign of terrorism. It could have been anywhere that they blew up. And he threw it down on the table and says, "We can't go back to this." What was that? But not an overt, sinister threat that if you dare to put the border where it should be, then that's what you're going back to. So if that was the message, that was an intimidating message and a hiding behind the skirts of violence message. And that, of course, I think still does resonate with the British government, which lived through Canary Wharf and London bombings and everything else, and who knows full well that the IRA, despite the lies and deceit, did not fully decommission, and know full well that republicanism is not committed to wholly peaceful means, and that nothing is off the table in that regard. And that just adds to the sense of betrayal and unease that I have and that other unionists have, that because we live within the law, make our arguments rationally and reasonably within the law, that there are lesser arguments because they don't have the backup of the terror threat of Irish republicanism. And so it has ever been in regard to recent years in Northern Ireland.
Yeah. Jim, recently you made a statement, the TUV made a statement, and it was in and around focusing on that if you were to come to power and if you had the opportunity as the main unionist party from within the Northern Ireland Assembly, would you nominate a First Minister? Jim, would you just like to talk about that and tell the live chat what it was that you were speaking about when you made that statement?
Well, let's be clear. There is much talk from time to time, indeed at every election, about the threat of a Sinn Féin First Minister. And therefore, other unionist parties, particularly presently the biggest unionist party, goes round the country with the exhortation, you must vote for them to keep Sinn Féin out. Now, this is the party which, of course, brought Sinn Féin in 2007, the very issue over which I left the DUP. It was about Ian Paisley sitting down to chuckle with Martin McGuinness in government. They enthroned Sinn Féin, and they enthroned him as a joint First Minister. Yes, there is someone called the First Minister. Yes, there is someone called the Deputy First Minister, but it is a joint office. It is a single office with two heads. Neither can hold office without the other. Indeed, neither can so much as sign a letter without the other, because it is a joint office. And therefore, the point that I have been making is that if unionists, and they should be concerned about symbolism and everything else of a Sinn Féin First Minister, if they are genuinely concerned about that, then the answer lies in their own hands. Because they can only, even if Sinn Féin were the biggest party, and they have been the biggest party in past European elections, for example, but if in the Assembly election they were to be the biggest party, there can only ever be a Sinn Féin First Minister if they find some stooge of a unionist party to nominate a deputy. Because without a deputy, a First Minister can't take office, and vice versa. So the answer does lie in unionism's own hands. And the challenge to every unionist party, if in those undesirable circumstances of Sinn Féin being the biggest party, would you, unionist party, nominate a deputy in order to enthrone Sinn Féin as First Minister? Or would you refuse to do so? TUV is very clear. If we were in that position, we would not be nominating a deputy, because we are not in the business of being either Sinn Féin's bridesmaid or ushering them into government as First Minister. And therefore, we would exercise the veto of blocking them in that regard. And the challenge is to the other two main unionist parties, would they do likewise? Or will they talk up the threat of a Sinn Féin First Minister, but never answer the question whether they're concerned enough about it to stop the post being filled by a Sinn Féiner by refusing to nominate a deputy? So that's the essence of that debate, and no doubt it'll be something that will feature in the upcoming Assembly election. My fundamental starting point in this is I'm not so foolish as to think that Sinn Féin's here to make Northern Ireland work. Quite the opposite. They're not presently in government to make Northern Ireland work. You can't make a success of Northern Ireland and then say, oh, but we need an all-Ireland republic. So it's in their vested interest to make sure there ever is instability, that Northern Ireland doesn't settle, that Northern Ireland doesn't succeed. Because if it did succeed, the whole case for Irish unity is gone. So why would I ever want to elevate and promote and sustain in government a party who doesn't even want the place to exist. And of course, that's the whole absurdity of the present system of mandatory coalition. Anywhere else in the world, when someone goes out to vote in an election, they can equally vote a party out of government as vote somebody else in. In Northern Ireland, by law, you're not allowed to do that. Under mandatory coalition, if a party holds a handful of seats, they are guaranteed, as of right, a place in government, even though they don't agree about anything with anyone. And that's the absurdity of mandatory coalition. And that's why that system will never bring stable government, or only bring the dysfunctionalism that we've got used to. So mandatory coalition needs to go. We need a system based on a voluntary coalition of the willing, and we need a proper opposition. It's a scandal that here we have an elected assembly in Northern Ireland and there's no official opposition, because all of the parties are in government. It's an absurdity. It's something you would expect in North Korea, not in Northern Ireland. But that's where we are under these absurd arrangements of the Belfast Agreement.
Yeah. Jim, I would like to take you back to a time frame, and it was in November, December of 2019, just before the general election. And at that time, people right around Northern Ireland, what they did was they looked at the process, the election that was to happen, and unionism as a whole. They decided that what they would do is that they would try to return unionists in whatever way that they could. And I know that you, Jim, personally, I mean, I know that you were you stepped aside. You didn't field any candidates against any unionist would-be MPs. Also, I mean, you went and you rapped the doors on the streets of Enniskillen, Fermanagh, for Tom Elliott, and you got behind other people like Nigel Dodds. And I mean, I can recall a night on the 6th of December in the Ulster Hall when you delivered a very, very good speech. And, you know, and I can remember some of the words of you delivering where you were sort of saying that, you know, the Belfast Agreement has only one destination. It delivers a referendum, a border poll, after which that border poll has to be voted on every 7 years. And, you know, I'm going to ask you a question here, Jim, but whenever we didn't get the result in the Brexit referendum, I mean, we won that referendum. The people that marked their acts on the leave the EU, well, we weren't afforded democracy. Should we ever accept a border poll? That's point one of this question. I'll come back and ask you another one. Should we ever accept, and would we be entitled to say, absolutely not?
Well, certainly on the experience of the last plebiscite, which was on the EU membership, we didn't get what was the outcome of that. So I think the whole process has been sullied, but there is a provision within the Belfast Agreement for the holding of a border poll. And you're right, you know, it's of particular note that the only referendum that can ever be held under the Belfast Agreement is one which effectively says, are you yet ready to join the Irish Republic? That's the only referendum you can have, which is a very clear indication of what the intended direction of travel of the Belfast Agreement is. And now, I don't fear a border poll in the sense that I have confidence that the greater number of people in Northern Ireland know what's good for them in terms of the economics and in terms of the of the stability that comes from being part of the United Kingdom. So I think a border poll would be held, but I do quibble over the fact that there should even have to be one. And now, of course, there can only be one if the Secretary of State thinks that there would be a likely change in viewpoint. But, you know, Secretary of States come and go, and they come with their own agendas, and who knows what and when one will arrive with that particular agenda and try and push it. And no doubt there'll be some of the great and the good, and particularly if the protocol were to stay, who would say the natural logic of being joined up economically in an all Ireland is to join up politically. And that's why I identify the protocol as such a promoter of Irish unity, because a stepping stone towards that is economic unity. And that's what the protocol is driving to make. So I do think that the manipulation of the protocol, in fact, to a significant degree, undermines the very credibility of the concept of holding a border poll, because it's trying to preordain the outcome by putting the protocol in place long enough to build the all-iron structures to try and make it a natural stepping stone. So we're being worked over by the protocol in that regard. But Northern Ireland's position in the United Kingdom has always been held and secured by the will of its people. And that is a will that I still have considerable confidence in. And that's something which I think, if you spell it out to your average citizen, do you want to start paying €100 to see your GP every time, to stay in hospital overnight? Do you want to start paying for things that you don't pay in Northern Ireland? Do you want to join a country which is the third highest per capita national debt level of the developed world? Do you want to join a country which doesn't have a national health service? I think you would soon have a reaction which would show, no, thank you very much, we'll stay where we are, thank you. And that, of course, is part of the big selling point of the United Kingdom. And of course, like any region of the United Kingdom, we are subvented. There's no region of the United Kingdom outside the southeast and London which doesn't depend on subvention from the centre, the northeast, the northwest. They all cost more than they raise in terms of money, and so it is with Northern Ireland. But who would find the 10 billion, the 12 billion subvention that Northern Ireland gets from London every year? Where are they going to find that? In Wicklow and Meath and Clare and all those places. Good luck to them trying to do that. But yet, of course, the romanticism of Irish republicanism doesn't even address those things, and thinks that somehow, well, they probably actually think the Brits will continue to pay for it. That probably would be their distorted approach, that really the United Kingdom should pay for an all-Ireland republic. That would be the par for the course in terms of their attitude.
Yeah, that was very good points that you expanded on there. Now, the point too, from the time surrounding the general election, was that people did get behind the DUP largely, and other candidates like Tom Elliott up in Fermanagh. And, there was things that happened, for example, like the UUP, where they fielded a candidate against Alex Easton when he was standing for a seat alongside Stephen Farry. And I believe in my heart that seat never should have been conceded to Stephen Farry if unionists had worked together. Now, looking at the time running up to that general election, and the fact that everybody got behind the DUP largely, and then, in my honest opinion, after the election, the DUP entered back to Stormont again to negotiate a thing called the New Decade New Deal. Now, I can recall myself and John Ross, we had met with Edwin Toots on the between Christmas Day and the New Year's Day of that year. And Edwin was brutally honest with us whenever that he had told us that they were going to permit an Irish language commissioner. And how he put it to us was that he put his hand in the middle of a table and he says, well, the commissioner has so many powers, but we're stripping the teeth from the powers. And he moved his hand to the end of the table. I can remember suggesting at the time, well, who remembers the parades commissioner? How did that one work out for unionists? Because a commissioner is an enforcer. And if you look at the parades commissioner, well, he makes a decision and no one can actually stop it. We had looked at the Republicans. I mean, I had often said is that, what part of what they're telling you do you not understand? I mean, they see the Irish language as a nation-building bag of tools, a nation-building strategy that have attached to it. And we know what's coming if a commissioner sees the light of day. The question is, Jim, should the DUP have ever conceded on Irish language?
Absolutely not, because Irish language has been weaponized, as you say. It's not about who learns what language. Who cares who learns what language? You're entitled to learn whatever language you like, but that's not what the promotion of the Irish language is about. The promotion of the Irish language is about de-Briticizing Northern Ireland, about making unionists feel uncomfortable in their own land. And of course, the proposition that the DUP scandalously agreed to, such was their urge and lust to get back into Stormont, a new decade-old approach, that they agreed an Irish Language Act, which now they're going to make Westminster bring in, I suppose, as a bit of a face saver, but an Irish Language Act that is to make Irish official language in Northern Ireland. Now, it might surprise some of your listeners. Nowhere in law does it say that English is an official language in Northern Ireland, but it's going to say in the Irish language legislation that Irish is an official language in Northern Ireland. And then this commissioner is going to be vested with powers to increasingly empower Irish in its usage in the public services, so that public services have to provide the services they offer in Irish to those who want them. Now, what does that mean in terms of job opportunities within the public service? Well, quite patently, if services have to be offered in Irish, you're going to need staff that understand and speak. So when jobs are being advertised in the public sector, quite obviously, the person with Irish, who's likely to come from the nationalist tradition, has the advantage job-wise. My children, my grandchildren, coming into that situation without Irish are going to be disadvantaged in jobs. So it's not just about the apparently innocuous thing about being able to advance a language. It's about the much more deep-seated issue of giving deliberate, calculated advantage to Irish speakers in the employment field across the public service. And that's why it's something, because it has been politicized, should never be granted. I don't care what language people speak, but I can tell you this: there's more need for a Polish Language Act or a Portuguese Language Act in Northern Ireland than there is for an Irish Language Act, because most of the people who speak Irish also adequately speak English. And we have a situation now in the Assembly where every one of the 90 MLAs is wholly proficient in English, and yet we're going to bring in absurdly artificial, contrived translation upon which we're going to spend hundreds of thousands of pounds, so that every word spoken will be translated into Irish, needlessly, and needlessly into Ulster Scots. And it's just, it's vanity project, it's waste, and of course it's politicised by the weaponisation that Sinn Féin has always brought to the Irish language, because it was one of their icons who said every word spoken in Irish is another bullet fired in the freedom struggle. That's really what it's about.
Absolutely. Jim, we've come to really the close of what we're here to do, but there's one more point that I want to put to you, and I would really like you to answer this. So this is just a very, very short audio clip of you speaking. And whenever we come back, I would just like to basically explain your words. Why was it that you felt the need to use these words?
The other aspect of this decision is the hint at collusion between the police and the Sinn Féin organisers, in that they engaged with a view to finding a balance. There's no balance between breaking the law and not breaking the law. The law was broken, and the DPP should hang his head in shame, as should the Chief Constable. And now the question for the DUP, this is a seminal moment for the DUP. Are they going to join in sweeping under the carpet that lies below the joint desk that Arlene Foster shares with Michelle O'Neill? Are they going to sweep under the carpet this partisan favouritism towards Sinn Féin? Are they going to grow a backbone and stand up and recognise that people cannot go on living in a society where those who are lawmakers can equally get away with law breaking?
Over to you, Jim.
Well, the point I was making was that under the COVID regulations, it was Michelle O'Neill on Sinn Féin side and the DUP, which in the executive made the laws that govern every citizen in terms of the do's and don'ts. And yet, when it came to the Bobby Storey funeral, the funeral of an ardent and notorious terrorist of IRA ill fame, he was buried with full IRA honours, as it were, with a crowd of 2,000 people, with a cortege, and with everything that you would expect except the police. No police, of course. And all that in flagrant breach of the very laws that Michelle O'Neill had helped shape and make, and who told us this is what you must do. But this is what she did, something totally different. And the point I was making was that threw a very direct gauntlet down to the DUP as to whether they could continue in that farcical situation of lawmaking with those who were, by choice, lawbreakers. Sadly, they made the wrong choice, not for the first time.
Jim, I want to thank you for coming along. I want to thank the way in which thank you for being very, very open and honest. Nothing really was off the table there. You answered everything in the way that I think that all politicians should be willing to do. And Jim, I would like to ask you if you would like to maybe come back again sometime in the very, very near future to talk about the TUV, to talk about how the TUV is growing, what your plans are for the future, what your plans are for the up and coming election, the assembly elections next May. And, again, I notice through doing what I do, I mean, we hear commentary from various people, and I notice a huge shift in support within British unionism right now. And I've got to take my hat off to you for persisting, keeping the TUV on the road, because I believe, Jim, that someday soon the TUV will have their day. And once again, I really, really thank you for coming along. Jim, if you would just like to give some closing comments to the live chat, and I'll be moving on for another half hour, and I know that you're going soon. Well, and one thing I asked you to say, Jim, is with reference to the Restore logo, again, if there was something that you wanted to restore, what would you want to restore today in 2021? Over to you, Jim.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. I've enjoyed it. And I certainly would be more than happy to come back and talk to you again. There's so much needs restored, but fundamentally, I think we need to restore integrity to politics, integrity to the union, and that entails the dismantling of the protocol, which of course has disemboweled the union. And we can't have integrity of the union without the restoration of the union, and therefore the defeat and removal of the protocol. Because I've said it many times, either we kill this protocol or it kills the union. It's as simple as that. Thank you very much.
Jim Allister, thank you very much, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you. So there you go, people. That was Jim Allister from the TUV, and I thought it was really a breath of fresh air to have Jim Allister on the screen. If you would just like to leave your messages on the live chat, and if you could tell us what it is that you think with reference to the interview, and we touched on a lot of areas. I thought a lot of important areas that we should touch on, and the reason why that we touched on specific areas was that so that people understand the problems that we as British Unionists face as we go forward, and and also the things that other British Unionists are unwilling to tackle, those so-called leaders that we have right now. So what we're going to do now, people, is that we're going to talk a wee bit about what it is that we're going to be up to coming very, very soon to Northern Ireland. Now, firstly, what I would like to do is I would like to just pop up a link in the live chat. If you're new to our channel, and I see the numbers have remained very, very high, well, I'm going to ask you to give us a like, give us a love, give us a share, tag people into the live chat, and do this so that we can get to invite you back here to Restore UK, because each and every week we have some fantastic guests discussing some very, very important subjects. And we also do a live from Scotland where we have Restore Scotland, and some David Griffiths from Scotland. Well, he brings on guests from there, and we'll be continuing to do that. So let me just explain some plans that we have going forward at Restore. Put a diary date for the 4th of December at 2 o'clock. Ourselves, people from here at Restore, we're going to Stormont. And the reason why that we're going to Stormont is that we're going to celebrate our centenary. And we have a few things that we really want to do. I mean, at every turn, Sinn Fein, well, they've blocked anything to do with the centenary. I mean, to the point whereby that they won't permit within the Assembly to have a centenary stone put at Stormont to mark the 100-year anniversary of Northern Ireland. And let's remember one thing, is they talk about partition, but who was it that partitioned Ireland? Well, they partitioned Ireland because they wanted to move away from England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. We didn't go anywhere. We stayed exactly where we were. And if they wanted to partition, well, that was their choice. They did it, and no one complained. But now we have the bizarre circumstances whereby that they want to trail us down a line that we actually don't want to go. And you know what? Here at Restore, I've talked to the people in the background. I've talked to people outside of Restore. And, you know, we've came to the conclusion that we won't be dictated to by Sinn Féin. And we will have a centenary celebration. And what we're going to be doing is that on Saturday, the 4th of December, and in around maybe 1:30, we're going to form up at 1:30 outside the main gate of the Upper Newtownards Road at Stormont. And, you know, we're going to be having some speakers, and also we're going to be announcing some initiatives on the day. Now, I'm going to ask the live chat. There's a lot of people here, and I'm going to ask the live chat. I mean, if you are in a band, if you are part of a loyal order, if you are part of a lodge, if you're part of a community grouping, you know, would you pledge your support? Would you actively encourage people to come along to participate in a celebration of our centenary before the year finishes? Now, I know that what is actually happening is that there is something planned for Stormont next May. But I believe that the centenary should be celebrated on the centenary. Now, I also know that there's various COVID regulations doing the rounds. And, you know, there's talk of maybe some restrictions. But look, there's a precedent that we will follow. And that's the Belfast City Council, which has all political parties attached to it. And they have permitted the Christmas market, and where there's going to be lots of people that will go to that Christmas market. So we will abide by the guidelines, and we will turn up at the front gates of Stormont at 1:30 on Saturday, the 4th of July at 1:30, and we're there to celebrate our centenary. Now, what it is that we would like to ask people to do is that we would ask people to get some stones. You know, you get like maybe little stones off a beach or any sort of stone, you know, any sort of rock. And, you know, maybe you could paint them. Maybe this is something that you could participate in with your children. And you could paint the stone as a commemoration of celebrate, and also of a celebration for the centenary. And if you could bring them along on the day. And what we would like to do is that we would like to place those stones together, and we would like to get some pictures of those stones. And we've also other things that we want to do on the day, but we won't be talking about them here. We won't be talking about other things right here. Now, as something quite wider that we have that we want to do here at Restore, and we're getting some great responses from some good people whenever that we announce something that we want to do. What we want to do is to mark the centenary. We want to start a process of what we want to do ultimately is that we want to plant 100 trees in 100 places right around this province. And we want to name the areas where the trees are planted you know, centenary gardens or centenary woods. And what we want to do is that we want to give maybe the wood where the trees are maybe a name relevant to our history from 100 years ago right up to the present day. You know, just to think about it, maybe a wood could be called Carson wood. And we could tell the story of Carson and his army and the foundation of Northern Ireland. And we make that information available to people that would want to go along and to use those areas in remembrance that in 100 years history that Northern Ireland has been here. Well, what we can do is that we can highlight some things from right from 100 years ago up until today's date. Now, what we also want to do is that we want to have various people from within our community, maybe with their children. We want those people to plant those trees, and we want those trees to be dedicated to the memory of whoever that those people want to dedicate those trees to. You know, it could be a suicide victim, which really does tell the tale of what happens here in Northern Ireland. It could be a war hero. It could be a veteran. It could be anyone or anybody. And what we would like to do is that within those communities where those trees are going to be planted, well, we would like to really put it out to the community to do this for themselves. Now, what we really want to do, and I think that this is achievable, is that we're hoping to fund this. The 10,000 trees that would be required, 10,000 saplings that would be required through donations and plaques for the trees and so on and so forth. So really, if you think that that's a good idea, maybe that you could leave some information in the live chat. Just think of it this way: 100 trees in 100 different places right around Northern Ireland as a remembering, marking, and celebrating the centenary, with information attached at all these locations, really telling the history of Northern Ireland and why that it was that we wanted to do it. Now, there's one there from Tony Watson, which is absolutely perfect. Tony, Home Guard Woods. Well, why not? Why not? You know, and there's lots of people coming forward with lots of different ideas. And you know, leave your messages in the live chat. Remember again, 100 wooded areas, 100 trees planted in 100 different locations, marking the centenary of Northern Ireland. And maybe, you know, by extension, we could create an app. And what we could do is that we could actually document every single tree, who planted the tree, who the tree is in memory of, and why that it is that that person felt the need to name that tree after an individual. As I say, it could be even suicide victims, you know, it could be anyone or anything, just really showing by extension, you know, what it is that's within society. So there you go. We want to be doing that, and we're also going to be talking about that whenever that we turn up at Stormont on the 4th of December at 1:30 p.m. and we're going to have some guest speakers, and we're hoping to have some bands also. Same thing, if you are any part of a marching band, well, maybe you could send us an email. Maybe you would like to agree to come and to play at the event, and you know, let's celebrate in Northern Ireland and the way that Northern Ireland people do, and let's take that celebration to Stormont, and let's say to Sinn Fein, well, we will not be dictated to by you. We will definitely not be dictated to by you. We'll be celebrating our centenary on the year of our centenary. So there you go, people. That's something that I'm hoping that you can do, that you can turn up at Stormont on that day and hear the various speakers, hear hopefully the bands, and also you know, to talk about where that it is that we go from here going forward. And I'm just going to pop this up here from Jim Werner. I'm just trying to. One for Dennis Hutchings is a reminder of the great betrayal. Well, absolutely, Jim. Absolutely. One for every soldier that is facing persecution and prosecution, and having those trees dedicated to and named after those people, and also creating the circumstances whereby every single tree, all those 10,000 trees and those 100 woods could be named, and the story could be told, and we could document that. And what a collation for people in the future to be able to, and you create a tourist trail where people could visit all 100 woods, looking at all 100 trees within each 100 woods, and looking at the stories attached to those trees, and learning why that individuals from within communities wanted to name those trees after these specific people. It's a good idea. It's very educational, and also, you're working in a way that you're complying with you're environmentally friendly. You're planting trees, and we know that trees are a good thing, and they're being encouraged here in Northern Ireland. So if you're a politician, or if you would like to become involved in this, if you have an idea for where a wood could be planted in your community, well, text us, send us a message, leave a message in the live chat. Make sure that you get in contact. And what we would do is, together, we can ensure that the 100 Wood project, hashtag, 100 Woods, well, we could make this a reality. I know several businessmen that would put money into this straight away, and and we can make it work. We can make it work. We've already been talking about where that we're getting the trees, and and how that we're going to get them planted. So what we're looking for right now is we're looking for areas to be able to plant these trees. Now, we have a few ideas of where that they can be planted, and we really want to be doing some planting in December, before the end of our centenary, and we're working very, very hard for at least having 2 sites planted in memory of our centenary, and then going forward over next year, where we can have all those 100 woods actually put in place. So look, people, thank you very much for coming along to our channel. And as I say, if you're here and you don't normally come here, if you make sure that you give us a like, you give us a love, you give us a share, you make it known in the live chat that you are here, and that way we can get to reach you in the future. And once more, people, again, here at Restore, we're a platform for the people, for and on behalf of the people, and that's what we do. We talk politics, we expose things, and with your help, with the live chat's help, well, we get our message actually out there. And what we do ask people to do, because we've done some very, very good work here at Restore, in terms of, we've purchased banners where we passed out all around this country. We're now completely professional in terms of the equipment that we have to make documentaries, outside video broadcasts, so on and so forth. And, that was with the help of the people here who helped us here at Restore. By helping us, you're actually helping yourself. So I'm going to pop up a little PayPal link in the live chat. And if you feel that you can put a small amount of money into that, well, you don't have to, but if you can, that would be gratefully appreciated, because we are actually, right now, as we speak, we are moving to buy 200 trees, 200 saplings, and everything that goes with it, with plaques and so on and so forth, to create 2 of these gardens. And we're going to be doing that very, very soon. So yes, I guess that we're asking for help from the live chat to be able to make this a reality. And look, as I say, if you can't afford to put any money into that, well, don't do it. We will make this work regardless of people helping us or not. And I've just got to thank Jim Allister once again for coming along, because Jim, I have to say that he answered those questions in a very, very informative way. And he answered those questions in a way that actually put other politicians behind the 8 ball, because of their inactions, because of their unwillingness, because of their inability to serve and protect the people of Northern Ireland, to the point whereby that the world and his whipping boy, they think that unionism, British unionism in Northern Ireland are easy targets, that they can have anything thrust upon them, and nothing ever happens. Nothing happens at all. The needle returns to the start of the song, and we all sing along like before, and we'll all be lonely tonight, be lonely tomorrow. Those are the words of a song, and I like to play that particular song from Delamitri here, because that's how our political leaders, so-called, that's how that they deal with things on a daily basis. What they do is they hope that the heat goes out of certain issues, and they hope that the people will just return to normal, and they'll all vote for the DUP and put the DUP in power. And they'll all vote for Mug Beatty, and they'll return Mug Beatty and his party to be constitutional unionists, but not economic unionists. People, as I asked Jim, was that compatible? And he laughed. He really laughed. And let me give you my take on that. But you see, if you're a constitutional unionist and you're not an economic unionist, what that means is that your aim is to facilitate the destruction of the UK internal market. Our biggest trading partner were people in England, Scotland, and Wales, and within the UK internal market. That was our biggest trade to and from. And the EU have come in and they placed some regulations and restrictions on in a way that trade that we used to do with people in England, Scotland, and Wales, and vice versa, back and forward the other way, well, that trade is now being reorientated towards the Irish Republic and being fed from the EU, which is making Northern Ireland an economic basket case. And Doug Beatty, for him to say that he is happy with that, well, the man's a lunatic, and I say that respectfully. Doug Beatty is dangerous. The Ulster Unionist Party is dangerous for those type of thought processes. And I make no apologies for saying that. The Ulster Unionist Party, as a collective, under Doug Beatty's leadership, is completely dangerous. People, thanks very much for coming along. I hope you enjoyed Jim. And what we're going to do is that we're going to play us out with a few songs, a few patriotic songs before that we close. And we're going to start off with a song. This is a song sung, written, performed, and sung by my son. And, I think the words of this song are really fitting, are particularly fitting for today. Just last week we heard that a conglomerate of minorities from within the Northern Ireland Assembly are voting to remove people's freedoms, and that can never be right. That who give them the right to remove your freedoms, your inalienable rights? Who do these people think that they are when they think that they can remove freedoms that are inalienable? Now, what do I mean? Well, you see, bodily autonomy, it's my body. They says before that it's my body, it's my choice, and it is my body, it's my choice. It's your body, it's your choice. And I don't care whether you have had the medicine, whether you haven't had the medicine. I've got to be very careful about how I say this. I don't care whether you have had the medicine, you haven't had the medicine. Look, it's people's right, it's people's choice. You have free will to decide whether you're taking it, whether you're not taking it. And these politicians, well, they're assuming the role of a dictator. And what I wanted to do is, I really should have played it in the previous stream whenever I was talking about this at length last week. But I was wanting to play this song, as I say, by my son, written and performed by my young son. And I say that these are very, very fitting words for today. So I'm going to start off by playing this, and then I'll be playing us out with our Hands Across the Water closing song. And what I would like you to do is to put your messages in the live chat, and I will be reading through the messages very, very soon. Thanks very much, people, for coming along, and we'll put some advertisements up on our pages with reference what next here at Restore. So good night from me, and again, once more, we've got to thank Jim Allister and the TUV for what it is that they're doing right now, and the relentless way in which they stand up against those that mean us most harm. Good night, people. Thank you very much.
Where the hell from you? Are you scratching the surface? Let them know that the life there's a purpose. Once you're like a service, putting blood in your hands, you're worthless. Seeing these curses, can you hear the pain in these verses? Be reoccurrence, I don't know that this is lurking. You know what? Let's get to working. I know know how you feel, we got the raw deal. You know the economy's growing, can't feed the family, we need to feel like a sympathy from a persona that can't relate to deal with the struggles. Y'all get expenses paid, never not half to eat a meal. Do you see a society in crisis? This COVID got you blinded. Do you overshadow suicide? We can't be like this because life's priceless. And all shapes and forms, you know life's priceless. Yeah, life's priceless. Life goes on, but with the radio on, take a minute to mourn all the pain in the past, the lingering on. Anxiety got us Papa Brothers show, we gotta move on. Carry this pain on, because days do get better. And life will only get better if you get a chance to pull it together. So let's pull it together. And I can't stop thinking, what if we could combine instead of hate and division? Just because walls built up don't mean we gotta be any different. Just a society created by politicians causing division. How different life would be if this wasn't the way we really live. You gotta listen, you learn it from the way you come across and interpret. Are we weak-minded? Not the pain and the troubles we inherit. And because you see it's so worthless, you got the nerve to call us a burden. Hope you take all of these words and now you swerve it, try to curb it. Makes we're masks for a flu that is lurking. Social distance keep us apart, divide and conquer and burn. No wonder we feeling so helpless with the way that this is turning. And my stomach is turning. We've had traumatic and sad static and felt pain and a panic. It's caused the life to feel tragic. Do the mathematics. It's a cause for concern over islands registered in these graphics, showing the world our future ain't happy. And to say this sadly, no change in environment with a pandemic happening and the support lacking. Do right by the people, but instead you choose to sit and watch this happen. We can talk about this topic because I'm wanting to drop it. Ain't no stopping these feelings when you cage us up with these lockings. We just longing for some help. If there's a topic y'all seem to be dropping, good to see my life ain't worth nothing. And these times get harder in different days. It ain't gonna feel like yesterday. I know. But brother, let it go, let it go, let it go. Cause when these times get harder in different ways, it makes you stronger than other days. I know. So brother, let it go, let it go, let it go. So let it go. Aim for the stars, raising the bars. Don't let nobody break you apart. You know what? I told you this from the very start. I can't stop thinking. And I can't stop thinking, what if we could combine instead of hate and division? Just because walls built up don't mean we gotta be any different. Just a society created by politicians causing division. How different life would be if this wasn't the way we really live. And I can't stop thinking, what if we could combine instead of hate and division? No hate and division. Just because walls built up don't mean we gotta be any different. Any different, no. Just a society created by politicians causing division. All them causing division. How different life would be if this wasn't the way we really live. The way we live.
Just across the Irish Sea stirs a heart of loyalty, raising honor and indignity, drives the will to keep us British free. Not alone are we on this journey, for in a land just across the sea is a hand that reaches out in friendship, and a bond that's lasted centuries. And its hands across the water, reaching out for you and me, for Queen Ulster and for Scotland, help to keep our loyal people free. Let the cry be no surrender. Let no one doubt our loyalty. Reaching out to the brave red hand of Ulster is the hand across the sea. Cross the water, reaching out for you and me, for Queen and Ulster and for Scotland, help to keep our loyal people free. Let the cry be no surrender. Let no one doubt our loyalty. Reaching out to the brave red hand of Ulster is a hand across the sea. Just across the Irish Sea stirs a heart of loyalty, raising honor and dignity. Drive the will to keep us British free. Not alone, we on this journey, or in a land just across the sea. It's a hand that reaches out in friendship. It's the hand across the sea. It's the hand across the sea. It's a hand across the sea.
We didn't join Europe to be swallowed up in some bureaucratic conglomerate where it's Euro this and Euro that and forget about being British. We're British and we're proud of it. Proud of our traditions, proud of our national character.